Few topics ignite as much curiosity as what happens after death. For those who have lived for decades, seen friends depart and begun to feel their bodies slow down, this question becomes closer, almost intimate. Carl Jung, known as the founder of analytical psychology and a pioneer in unlocking the mysteries of the subconscious mind, left behind remarkable accounts of what he claimed to have witnessed on the other side. In a rare recording, long forgotten and buried within his private archives, Jung speaks with serenity about what human consciousness encounters when it detaches from the body. This hidden material, recently brought to light through the efforts of researcher Elena Graves, has now been transcribed and studied by scholars. It's direct, straightforward, and surprisingly clear. According to Jung, death isn't the end, but a conscious transition, experienced with a sense of lucidity. For those who fear the moment of departure, these Jung's revelations, recently unearthed through the work of Elena Graves, offer more than just answers. They offer a rare and quiet peace, one that's difficult to describe and perhaps only fully felt by those approaching that final threshold. Jung, like a gentle guide rather than a prophet, believed that much of our fear surrounding death came from our ignorance of it. By illuminating what may await beyond, he suggested we could transform not only how we face death, but how we live in our final years. In this recovered excerpt from the interview, he describes in detail what happens in the first moments after passing. According to him, the spirit detaches from the body gently, like waking from a deep sleep. There's no pain, no confusion, just the clear perception of being alive, but on another plane. Many seniors who have heard this account say they felt immediate relief. If this video brings you any comfort or reflection, please consider showing your support with a like or subscribing to keep up with content like this. In Carl Jung's reflections, he describes a post-death experience that closely resembles a life review, though not one shaped by divine judgment. Instead, Jung envisioned consciousness moving rapidly through the defining moments of a life, not to condemn, but to understand. The love we offered and the pain we inflicted returned to us as pure sensation, stripped of narrative, justification, or denial. It is not an external authority that imposes this process, but the soul itself, compelled by a deep instinct to comprehend its own evolution. This vision stands in quiet contrast to the fear-based teachings of eternal punishment found in many religious traditions. For Jung, heaven and hell are not destinations, but psychological states born of our thoughts, emotions, and intentions. This insight reshapes how we think about our past and, more urgently, how we choose to live what remains of our present. In a passage revealed through Elena Graves' exploration of Jung's private archives, he describes what he called the threshold moment, a transition in which the soul, upon detaching from the body, is met not with confusion or isolation, but with a gentle sense of reunion. Jung wrote of souls being welcomed by familiar presences, parents, siblings, old friends, even lost loves, who seem to have been quietly waiting. These encounters, he noted, are not marked by words or appearances, but by pure emotional recognition. One simply knows the other, heart to heart. Jung believed this moment served a vital purpose, to help the soul orient itself in a space that might otherwise feel vast and unfamiliar. For those nearing the end of life, especially those who have outlived most of their loved ones, this vision offers something more than comfort. It replaces the fear of separation with the possibility of reunion, transforming the end into a return. One of the most striking revelations found in the Elena Graves transcripts of Jung's private interviews is his account of how time operates beyond the physical world. Jung described time on the spiritual plane not as linear, but as fluid, malleable to the soul's intent. A single moment could expand into what feels like eternity, while entire years might pass in an instant. The psyche, he noted, moves not by minutes, but by meaning. This dissolution of time helps explain a common experience. Why spiritual presences can feel immediate, even decades after a person's passing. According to Jung, it's not that they return to us, but that they never truly left. In the realm beyond, presence is not measured by duration, but by attention. Jung suggested that the spirit not only learns and grows beyond the physical plane, but often seeks to support those still living. That sudden warmth we feel when thinking of someone lost, he wrote, may not be mere memory. It may be the subtle presence of that soul, gently offering comfort in a way that defies explanation but is unmistakably felt. Jung also placed deep importance on preparation, not through ritual or religious conformity, but through inner alignment. Peace, gratitude, and awareness, he believed, shaped the soul's vibration far more than accomplishments or status. In the pages Graves uncovered, he emphasized that death should not arrive as a random event, but as a conscious, dignified crossing, one that reflects a life honestly examined. To that end, Jung urged a late-life reckoning, not to appease a divine judge, but to release the weight the soul cannot leave behind. To forgive, to ask forgiveness, to give thanks, these are not spiritual courtesies, but inner necessities. For whatever remains unresolved, he warned, is carried into the next realm where it becomes not forgotten, but more visible. And those who understand this while still alive, he wrote, begin their next journey not just free, but luminous. In one particularly revealing fragment from Jung's private interviews, he reflects on those who reject the very idea of life after death. Jung suggested that disbelief does not prevent the transition, but it can complicate the early moments of it. Such souls, he wrote, often linger in a kind of perceptual fog, confused not by suffering, but by the absence of a framework to understand their disembodiment. In these cases, spiritual guides, or what Jung called psychic constellations of care, gently assist the soul in adjusting to its new reality. This insight underscores a central theme in Jung's hidden work. That belief is secondary to awareness. Whether or not one believes in the afterlife does not change its unfolding, but it does shape how that unfolding is felt. That's why Jung encouraged open, honest conversations about death, particularly with the aging. He believed that preparing for the transition is less about doctrine and more about cultivating clarity, trust, and acceptance. The more consciously we live, he wrote, the more simply we die. Jung also spoke often about the endurance of love beyond death. In the Graves documents, he firmly rejects the notion that death severs our deepest connections. Instead, he described true love as forming bridges of resonance between realms. This doesn't imply the departed remain stuck, but rather that they can respond when we are inwardly tuned. A sincere thought, a moment of stillness, or a memory vivid enough to open the veil. He cited numerous cases where the dead offered comfort, insight or presence, not in dramatic visions, but through quiet impressions. For the elderly weighed down by guilt, grief, or unfinished goodbyes, this offers something powerful, the chance to still say what needs to be said, to love again, even after loss. And in doing so, Jung believed, we transform our final days, not into waiting rooms for the end, but sacred time for healing, honesty, and grace. One of the most compassionate insights revealed in the examination of Jung's hidden interviews is his deep insistence that no one is abandoned. Even those who have lived in error, caused harm, or lost their way are not cast out. Jung wrote that the soul is not evaluated by external rules, but understood in its full psychological depth, its pain, its choices, its regrets, all held with profound empathy. In his view, Mistakes were not marks of failure, but necessary stages in spiritual individuation, the soul's path to wholeness. Jung acknowledged reincarnation not as punishment, but as opportunity. The soul, he believed, continues to grow beyond the physical body, with each lifetime offering a new terrain for integration and healing. For those late in life who feel it's too late to change, this realization is liberating. The journey does not end with death. The body may rest, but the psyche carries on, learning, refining, awakening. Graves' transcripts describe Jung's vision of a transitional state he called the luminous interval, a realm where the soul reflects on its lived experience. There is no rush here, no punishment, no hierarchy, only clarity. Each soul advances at its own rhythm, lingering as long as needed in that place of learning before choosing its next step. Jung likened it to a vast inner school, where one is both student and teacher, guided by the quiet wisdom of the self. For the elderly, often shaped by lives of pressure, duty, and fear of running out of time, this perspective offers deep reassurance. To know that the soul is met with patience, that there is time to heal and continue, reframes death entirely. It becomes not an end, but a widening of the path, and Jung added, the more consciously we begin this reflection now, while still alive, the more gracefully we enter that next chapter. One of the most quietly powerful ideas drawn from Elena, Graves's discovery, is his emphasis on the significance of small, sincere actions. Jung spoke of how the soul responds not to grand gestures or ritualistic displays, but to the authentic intention behind our choices. A simple act, an apology, a kind word, a heartfelt embrace carries more spiritual weight than many realize. The soul, he noted, remembers feeling, not performance. For those nearing the final stretch of life, this insight is deeply comforting. It reveals that it's never too late to do something meaningful. A single call, a handwritten note, even a silent blessing can resolve inner knots and lift unseen burdens. Jung suggested that such moments don't vanish with death. They follow the soul, bringing clarity and lightness into whatever lies beyond. In multiple passages, he also clarified that the continuation of consciousness is not dependent on belief, but is instead a lived truth. Just as one need not understand wind to feel it move through the trees, one need not fully comprehend the afterlife to undergo it. What prepares us isn't certainty, but presence. Integrity, love, and inner stillness are, in Jung's view, the soul's true provisions. For elders especially, this vision offers more than comfort. It offers a quiet invitation to pause, to reflect, to step out of fear and into a deeper awareness. That the journey is not ending, only unfolding, and with every honest act in these final days, a bridge is built, not to closure, but to the next luminous chapter. In the recovered dialogues, Carl Jung often emphasized that the way we approach death is a reflection of how we've approached life. Those who lived rigidly or harshly often resist the moment of departure, while those who embraced forgiveness, humility, and simplicity tend to meet it with calm acceptance. It wasn't about doctrine, Jung insisted. It was about consciousness. At the end, the soul carries not possessions or roles, but the inner architecture it has quietly built over time. Though we cannot return to change the past, Jung believed we can change our relationship to it. This is especially empowering for those in their later years. There's still time, he said, to bring understanding to old wounds, to soften what was once hard, and to recognize that even pain, when seen through the lens of love, can become light. Another recurring theme in Jung's transcripts was the distinction between attachment and love. He saw attachment as a force that binds the psyche, while love, in its truest form, liberates. Clinging to those who've passed, or to relics of the past, can obscure the soul's forward movement. Honoring the dead, he wrote, isn't about holding on. It's about remembering with gratitude and continuing one's own path with meaning. For those who've experienced deep loss, partners, siblings, children, this view offers a gentle shift. Grief need not be an anchor. Jung encouraged viewing cherished memories as candles, glowing, not heavy. By releasing what no longer belongs to the present, we make space for a quieter, more enduring connection. Not one born of longing, but of matured love, confident that the soul's bonds outlast the physical and that true connection never truly ends. Among the most touching revelations found in Elena Graves's examination of Carl Jung's hidden transcripts is his reflection on the soul's purpose. Like Edgar Cayce, Jung believed that no life is accidental. Every individual, no matter how ordinary their role might appear, whether a grandfather passing on quiet wisdom, a mother nurturing with love, or a laborer working with dignity, carries a unique mission embedded deep in the psyche. Jung suggested that the soul only fully grasps the meaning of its journey after death. In the state beyond, free from the distractions of ego and time, it sees clearly how even its smallest choices contributed to a greater design. For those in their later years wondering, was it enough? This perspective is deeply comforting. It reminds us that truth, not grandeur, is what gives life meaning, and that the mission of the soul remains active until the very last breath. In one transcript, Jung compared the transition to stepping through a familiar door, one we've sensed all our lives but have hesitated to open. On the other side, there is no chaos or void, but a quiet order where everything begins to align. Mistakes, triumphs, love, regret, all take their place within a larger purposeful whole. For the aging, who often reflect on past choices with uncertainty, this view offers peace. To know that no sincere effort was wasted, no suffering without value, can soothe even the most restless spirit. And this, perhaps, is why both Jung and Cayce emphasize that death is not an end, but the next phase of an unfolding story. One not ruled by fear, but illuminated by understanding. One of the most striking elements uncovered in the hidden files is Carl Jung's private reflection on the sensation of the soul detaching from the body, remarkably similar to Edgar Cayce's descriptions. Jung noted, in a calm and almost clinical tone, how many who had crossed over spoke of a surprising lightness, a gentle shift rather than a dramatic rupture. The soul, he wrote, often doesn't immediately realize it has left the physical form until it notices it can no longer affect or be perceived by the material world. This mirrors countless near-death experiences and reinforces the idea that death is not a violent cut, but a soft transition, like falling asleep in one room and waking up in another. For elderly listeners and readers, this insight carries immense comfort. It replaces the fear of loss with the sense of continuity. Jung, like Cayce, believed that the psyche, the soul, carries the full imprint of life's experiences into whatever lies beyond. In his own words, nothing lived is ever lost. Death then becomes a continuation of psychological evolution, not its end. In one of Cayce's final recorded moments, when asked what he would do with just one day left, his answer was disarmingly simple. He would give thanks, not for perfection, but for the chance to live, to grow, to feel. In Elena Graves's notes on Jung, there's a mirrored sentiment. He wrote that gratitude aligns the soul with what is eternal. It is, in both men's view, the vibration that eases the transition, and perhaps that is the greatest message for those nearing life's threshold. Not to delay what is natural, nor to fear what must come, but to face it with clarity, dignity, and presence. Even in the final days, there is still time to forgive, to say what matters, to feel the warmth of memory. Gratitude, Jung believed, is the soul's final act of awareness. And a soul that departs in gratitude doesn't just cross over, it ascends. With light, It isn't necessary to believe every vision or teaching encountered along the way. What matters most is that each person seeks their own understanding of what it means to exist beyond the body. As Jung emphasized, the path toward wholeness is personal and symbolic. He encouraged reading, introspection, solitary reflection. The more intimate our relationship with inner silence, the easier it becomes to grasp the deeper layers of the psyche and perhaps the soul. This suggestion may seem simple, but it has enormous impact, especially for those in a phase of life marked by recollection. For many seniors, silence is part of the daily rhythm, and when embraced consciously, it becomes a gateway to what is most essential within. Jung didn't preach absolute truths. He offered tools. And among the most powerful was this: whoever learns to be at peace with their own inner world walks more calmly toward the unknown. In his later writings, Jung remained devoted to the mysteries of the soul, not to convince, but to illuminate. He believed that truth once glimpsed doesn't demand defense, it simply is. He didn't offer certainties, but symbols, not final answers, but language for the unspeakable. Today, so many years after his time, his reflections still resonate, especially among those who feel the quiet nearness of farewell. Not because they explain everything, but because they open a new way of seeing what lies ahead. For those who have lived deeply, endured much, and questioned even more, perhaps what matters most in the end is this: a little truth, offered gently, not as dogma, but as direction. Not as finality, but as invitation. In the quiet conclusion of a life fully lived, perhaps the most liberating realization is that the soul is not bound by the body. This understanding, whispered with serenity rather than fanfare, continues to resonate with those who seek comfort in the face of the unknown. It's not about greeting death with joy, but meeting it with understanding, with less fear and more acceptance. For those in their later years carrying the weight of decades, this may be the final and most compassionate. We don't need all the answers. It's enough to befriend the questions and trust that the journey doesn't end here. Each new day becomes a preparation, a deepening. And when the time comes to cross the threshold, we do not go alone or lost. We go accompanied by all that was, lived with truth and love. If these words resonated with you, consider passing them on to someone else who may need them. And if you wish, stay connected with reflections that honor your path. There is something deeply human in wondering where we go when this chapter ends. Jung reminded us that life moves toward individuation, a process that doesn't halt with physical death, but continues in forms we may not yet comprehend. He did not promise celestial rewards or punishments. Instead, he pointed to the ongoing unfolding of the self, the psyche's search for wholeness that transcends time and space. This alone is enough to change how we live now. For those nearing the end, this idea can bring peace. And for those still on the path, it can be a quiet invitation to live with more presence, more affection, more listening. Because in the end, what we carry with us is not what we owned or accomplished, but what we understood, felt, and gave. Death, then, is not a rupture, but a passage. Not an erasure, but a continuation. And no one makes that passage entirely alone. There is always memory. There is always love. There is always the silent hand of something greater, waiting, not to judge, but to welcome. Those who have felt the presence of a loved one after their passing know that there is more to life than what can be touched or seen. What we call the unconscious, Jung would say, is not just a personal reservoir, it is a vast shared space, a field where the bonds of the soul continue beyond the boundaries of the body. The connection between souls does not dissolve with death. It transforms. It matures in longing. It glows through memory and gratitude. Elders, through their lived experience, often grasp this truth more intuitively. They have walked through many departures, heard the silences that only time can translate, and found that love, true, deep, archetypal love, endures. This is not romanticism, nor is it a denial of death's mystery or sorrow. It is a deeper way of seeing. Death through the Jungian lens is not an end but a transition, a symbolic crossing, a return to the self, to that which has always been present within us, but often hidden beneath the noise of everyday life. To approach death with respect instead of fear is a mark of inner maturity. It is what Jung called the final task of individuation, integrating the shadow, accepting the cycle, and preparing the soul for its next unfolding. In doing so, we affirm that the psyche is not extinguished, but transformed. If this message brought you reflection, peace, or even curiosity, consider sharing your thoughts. Your story may illuminate someone else's path, and if you find meaning in this kind of content, gentle, thoughtful, soul-oriented, feel welcome to stay connected. In the end, death is not an abyss. It is a bridge, one we will all cross, each in our own time, carrying with us only what was lived in truth and love. May your days be filled with lightness, and when the time comes, may the silence carry you gently, guided by the presence of those who came before, and by the love that never ends. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.